Hello, I'm Jake Boudreau, civic journalist at Tello Community Television. This week, on The Record, I spoke with Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton after the October 1st regular monthly meeting of Port Hawkesbury Town Council. Then I talked with Michele MacPhee, Administration and Coordinator with the Centre of Rural Aging and Health, or CORAH. But first, Nova Scotia's Minister of Natural Resources and Renewables shared some big news about the long-awaited Bill C-49. With me today is Natural Resources and Renewables Minister Tory Rushton. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
According to a press release from your department, amendments to provincial legislation introduced on September 10th will advance Nova Scotia's opportunities by promoting the renewable energy industry. You said, and I quote, we're making changes that help improve public safety and strengthen industries in rural Nova Scotia. Perhaps you can provide, that was last month, so perhaps you can provide an update on how that legislation is proceeding right now.
Absolutely. So Bill 471 is what it ended up being titled with the legislative number. It passed through the House about a week ago and received royal assent I believe on the 20th of the month, which is good. And there was a few different things. It was the Accord Act that was in the legislation, and it was also some housekeeping items with procurements and some fisheries things. But it was mainly about the Accord Act with the offshore wind that we want to develop, and the mirror legislation that we had to do in conjunction with our federal legislation partners.
According to your department, the Advancing Nova Scotia Opportunities Act is an omnibus bill that addresses 7 pieces of legislation. First, the Canada-Nova Scotia Offshore Petroleum Resources Accord Implementation Act to expand the mandate of the Canada-Nova Scotia Offshore Petroleum Board to regulate offshore renewable energy projects and power lines. Second, the Marine Renewable Energy Act to ensure a timely path forward for offshore wind development. The Gas Distribution Act to support investments in low carbon fuels such as hydrogen and renewable natural gas, considering that gas distribution is in fact regulated by Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board. And finally, the Fisheries and Coastal Resources Act to improve the licensing process for low impact sustainable aquaculture in response to extensive consultation with the industry and other stakeholders. Your department claims that amendments supporting offshore wind will position Nova Scotia for the first call for bids in 2025 and help Nova Scotia and Canada as well as other countries achieve climate change goals. Is this a matter of the province? Now, you said it's been gone through the legislature and some things have happened since this was released, but is this a matter of the province going it alone, and is the federal government simply not doing its part to help usher in the offshore wind industry among other industries?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. Absolutely not. The actually quite timely conversation is of last night. The Senate approved Bill C-49 at the federal level. So both the federal government and our provincial government are both in agreement of how the regulatory pathway will go. All this bill does is allow us to develop and create the regulatory pathway to achieve the offshore wind targets and goals that we set for our province. So yeah, very timely. So yeah, no, we've been lockstep and barrel, if you will, with our federal counterparts. It's been great collaboration. We both wanted to see the same things, and this actually positions Nova Scotia, quite frankly, could be the first province in Canada to see an offshore wind project come to fruition.
We had been following the progress or lack of progress on that bill. It's and it's nice to hear that did progress and yeah, I mean, this would have been impossible to do without some buy-in from the federal government and their involvement.
Absolutely. The way the Accords Act is set up, there was no possible way the province could do it. Even the Marine Renewables Act that we tabled that would allow us a pathway forward without the Accord Act, or while we were waiting for the Accord Act, if you will, we still needed our federal counterparts at the table to work with us for the regulatory pathway. And of course, it's shared waters that we're looking at. We're not looking at the in waters of Nova Scotia. We're looking at the shared federal provincial waters that both ministers have to have an agreement on the pathway forward. So yeah, we're very pleased that both of our legislations have been finished in our legislative process. Now they have to receive the proclamation and the official royal assent at the federal level, and we can take the next step to work on the regulatory pathway and allow the regional assessment team to complete their review and then continue consultation. There's many players at work here. The Fishers are First Nations. We cannot ignore any consultation. I've been very adamant when the Premier announced 2 years ago that we were going to have 5 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. We were very adamant. We have many partners at play here. There's sectors that have already been using our waters, but this is a new sector that's coming into play. We're not here to pit one sector against another. There can be coexistence, and we'll find that pathway forward.
And it looks like everything's on track for 2025 for you guys to reach your goals as a government.
To announce the first projects, it certainly there's still a lot more work to be done before that first call for bids for offshore wind, but the pathway is set that we can get to work.
Now another development on September 15th, Sean Fraser, Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities, on behalf of the Federal Minister of Environment and Climate Change, announced a $9.25 million investment through the Energy Innovation Program for 2 projects led by Net Zero Atlantic to develop offshore wind energy and bring forward more clean technologies in the Atlantic region to decarbonize the region's electricity grid and supply the affordable, reliable, and clean energy needed. Of this funding, $6 million will support the Atlantic Canada Offshore Wind Integration and Transmission Study. In partnership with the Atlantic provinces, NZA is managing the delivery of a comprehensive electricity system integration study that will evaluate how electricity produced from Atlantic Canada's offshore wind resources can help clean up the regional electricity grid. Secondly, it will identify opportunities to export made in Canada renewable electricity and clean hydrogen. Additionally, $3.25 million will fund the Net Zero Emerging Concepts and Technologies Research Program, which will invest in research and development for new clean technologies and support measures in Atlantic Canada to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reach emission targets. I just want to get your reaction to that announcement, and I assume that will also help decarbonize and green up the grid, I guess, for lack of a more delicate term.
Yeah, obviously, it's a responsibility of the provincial government, not the federal government, to look at these concepts, if you will. But we have a willing partner at the federal level, and this announcement, I believe, the majority of the funding did go to Net Zero Atlantic, that are working on projects to ensure we're taking the right pathways. Where we need some academia to assist us in guiding with certain calls for bids and sort of project how this new sector for our province is going to go. So yeah, these are welcome funding announcements from the federal government, and they're certainly going to play a hand in achieving the provincial goals of 80% renewables by 2030, off coal by 2030, and the net zero goals that we have as a province for 2050. These initiatives are all going to help us and assist us to get there.
Yeah, well, that's great. I really appreciate you taking time out of your, what I'm sure is a busy schedule, to answer my questions and speak with our viewers. Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure. And look, if we have the opportunity again, I'd certainly love to be here. And until next time, stay safe, and we'll talk soon.
I'd like to begin with some thoughts about the presentation made by the Director of Public Works, Jason McMillan. Can you give me a sense on why that presentation happened specifically for tonight's meeting?
Certainly. So, different expressions of concern, some at doors, some on social media. So I think it was really useful to have the process around how we are tackling our infrastructure as a town from a staff perspective for the benefit of public consumption, so that people who are watching, and certainly we are a live stream, but also we share the recording of our council meeting. So it's kind of an easy reference, so that if people do have concerns or wondering what we have done to tackle some of our aging infrastructure, it's kind of an easy reference, so that we can have we can direct some citizens to go back and listen in to that particular presentation, but also to the benefit of everyone sitting around the table. It's nice to have a little bit of a refresher in terms of what we have done over the past terms to tackle our infrastructure. You know, certainly towns, or our town of Port Hawkesbury, similar to other towns across the province and other municipalities as well, you know, we struggle with aging infrastructure. And obviously our tax base, you know, is such that, you know, it's not something that you can, you know, correct in just one bite. It's I've compared it to, say for example, it's an elephant. You can only kind of eat it one bite at a time, you know, until we were able to get to a place where, you know, we are in a position to do preventative maintenance. So wouldn't that be a wonderful position to be in? But until that day, we have to tackle as much of our aged infrastructure as we can, while remaining fiscally prudent and looking at increasing our revenue streams as a town to be able to be more ambitious with tackling our aging infrastructure.
Any myths going around or disinformation that you feel that this presentation was necessary to debunk?
Well, I think if there is any argument with regard to that runs contrary to what's been presented, it could debunk some misinformation that could be percolating in the community, most definitely. But at the end of the day, it's also a learning opportunity, so that, you know, we are clearly articulating to citizens of the town how we have been tackling our aging infrastructure. So all information is good information.
That some of these concerns are centering around Pitt Street and that water tank, because I know you had some questions during his presentation. They seem to surround that aspect.
Yeah, most definitely. So, you know, part of a big part of the work that we have done over the past 2 terms have been around ensuring that we are up to date with all of our water infrastructure. You know, those kinds of projects are critically important. Obviously, clean, safe drinking water is a huge aspect of a safe, healthy community. So we want to make sure that we are keeping up with that and being able to provide that high level of drinking water to our citizens. So that is a very, very important aspect from a municipal perspective.
I'm just curious, Director McMillan also pointing out 2 things that seem to be universal themes: the idea that it's not just Port Hawkesbury facing a municipal infrastructure deficit, it's the entire country, and that the choosing of areas such as road paving or sidewalks isn't done arbitrarily, that this is done based on the list that council puts together, and as he said, the worst areas get tackled first. Your thoughts on either of these?
Yeah, certainly. So as per Jason's presentation, you know, the staff really do kind of prioritize a list, and they make those recommendations to council. You know, certainly it's within council's wheelhouse to accept recommendations or also offer some other options for some roads that may need attention. And at the end of the day, the roads that are chosen for whether it's rehabilitation, asphalt, or even, you know, any sidewalk work that is required or curb work that's required. Those things at the end of the day are decided and ratified through the budget process. And throughout the year, it is the job of staff to go ahead and implement what's been approved in the budget for throughout that budget year.
Okay.
Were you satisfied with the explanation you received from the Director of Public Works, Jason McMillan?
Yeah, Absolutely. And if there are further questions, of course, from any citizens, I would ask that you, forward your questions, and if I can't provide the answer, I can certainly get staff to prepare answers, because at the end of the day, it's important that some of these answers are provided. And, we're in a pretty kind of critical point that, it's important that citizens understand all the work that council has undertaken, not just this year, but in prior years. And you need that information in order to look forward and determine what kind of council that you would like to see in the future. So again, having all that information is positive and helps people decide.
There was a public forum held earlier today about electronic voting and helping people get used to the idea of electronic voting if they haven't done it before. First of all, quick question. Were you at this forum or was anybody from the town there?
So there would have been town staff present. Melissa Warner, a returning officer, would have been present for that presentation and there to answer questions or concerns from citizens. And at the end of the day, there will be further sessions that citizens can take in if they should so choose. And one message that I would love to express to all of the voters in Port Hawkesbury is that you can still come in person. If you do not have electronics at your house or you feel uncomfortable about the electronic voting process, you can come in to the Civic Center and you can see Melissa anytime between October 10th and October 19th during regular business hours, or you can come in during the designated times for the advance polls or on election day. Your vote will still continue to be confidential, so we will have helpers on site who can get them to the point where they just have to touch instead of write their vote. So I certainly wouldn't want any citizens within the town to worry that if they do not have electronics or that they can vote. They can certainly come into the Civic Center in person and they have all the assistance at their disposal so that they can vote in a very safe, easy, and confidential manner. And I would also add that in prior years, we did have telephone option for voting. And citizens can most definitely take advantage of the telephone voting option as well, the same as that was offered in prior years as well.
Quick question, do you know offhand how they participate in the telephone voting option?
I have never voted via telephone. But if there are any questions about how can I vote via telephone, please reach out to Melissa Warner or pop in person. During regular business hours, her office is in the Arts and Crafts Room in the Civic Center. Please pop in. She is more than happy to give the information to anyone who has any questions about the voting process, whether it's in person or whether how to do it, online at their home, or what are the options in terms of the telephone voting, or coming during advance polls or coming during election day. And I certainly will also add that citizens can expect to get letters in the mail this week or early next week where they will receive information on how to vote, as well as a code that they can use should they want to vote from home. Or if they want to vote in person, you can take that letter with you, and we have folks that are here that can assist with that process.
So just a clarification, there is still in-person voting that could happen. It just won't happen on a paper ballot. Is that how it works?
That is absolutely correct. So people can come and cast their vote in person 100%. And it can be done in a very confidential manner, very similar to what citizens would have expected at the last election process. The only difference being is that they will cast their vote on a tablet instead of writing it on a piece of paper.
The public meetings that you guys have scheduled for would be Thursday. Is the intent to give residents some information before voting in the public site? Is that what you're looking at doing?
Absolutely. So as per, I guess when you are asking a plebiscite question with a municipal election, it's important that there is the information based specifically on that question is provided to the public. So that's precisely what that meeting will be all about. It's important that citizens have the opportunity to understand what a yes vote or a no vote means on that plebiscite. So Nova Scotia Public Works staff will be on site to talk about the data that they've been able to garner through the pilot period for the road reconfiguration. And they will also have data based on the pre-design of that, which when we had a 4-lane configuration, and that will give information for citizens so that they can look at the before and after data and make a determination for themselves which design it is that they prefer. And at the end of the day, it's a non-binding plebiscite question, but we will take that information and we will provide the outcome of that plebiscite to Nova Scotia Public Works so they can consider it in their overall decision making. And just to reiterate that Reeve Street belongs to the province of Nova Scotia, not to the town of Port Hawkesbury. So ultimately the decision on the final design of that road will be in the hands of the province.
I know part of the concern around the council table is that it's been difficult to get public works officials to come to Port Hawkesbury and update the project and answer some of the questions that have been put out. You mentioned that they're going to be at these open houses that are taking place on Thursday. Do you get the sense that the measures taken by council, including putting this to a plebiscite vote and putting a letter together to say that council wants to revert back to the 4 lanes, has communication improved at all between the town and the province on this front since these measures were taken?
Well, certainly I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of the province of Nova Scotia. That's certainly a question that they would have to answer. But we did have communication prior to both of the items that you are referencing. We did have some communication with senior staff from Nova Scotia Public Works with regard to the 14 items that we flagged in terms of what was needed for improvements with the current design. So some of those items that were flagged were, for example, having smart lights that have a dedicated left turn. Also smart lights that if there were no traffic queued in on, say, for example, Reynolds Street or Pitt Street, that the lights on Reeve Street would be continuous green. So you would need cars queued in at those intersections to trigger a light change. Things like, improvements to our current pedestrian crossways on Reeve Street, in particular, the one by Old Sydney and Reeve Street. And those side profiles that indicates that there is a pedestrian crossing. We want to see some improvements there, some improvements to signage, some improvements to lots of intersections that seem to kind of, pose some confusion for the users of Reeve Street. So there are 14 items that we would like to see remedied regardless. And at the end of the day, the province does have that information. And they will get the information as a result of the plebiscite, and they are presenting the data, to the public, and that will give the kind of information that the public will need to answer that yes or no question on the plebiscite, with regard to the lanes on Reeve Street. And at the end of the day, they will take that information away and ultimately come to a decision.
Quick question. You mentioned Public Works and town staff are going to be at these open houses, these public consultations. Any RCMP presence at these events?
Well, that's a good question. I can say that the 14 items that were flagged that I referenced earlier were the result of a team effort. So we did have a Reeve Street committee that we struck to look at the overall performance of the road reconfiguration. So there were members of the RCMP on that committee. There was also members of the fire department. We had council members as well as town staff. So all of the 14 items that were flagged were certainly a team effort, and the RCMP were certainly part of that work.
With me today is Michele MacPhee, Administration and Project Coordinator with the Center of Rural Aging and Health, or CORAH, and they're located at the NSCC Straight Area campus. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So first off, perhaps you can talk about what your group is and does for those who might not be familiar.
Sure, happy to. So CORAH is, I always say it's not my name, it is actually an acronym. It's the Center of Rural Aging and Health, and we're a fairly new initiative. We're one of 3 NSCC campuses in the province with a CORAH site. And really what we're all about is providing opportunity and space for older adults, 55 and above, to come together, to meet new people, learn new things, connect, participate socially, and sometimes even in intergenerational activity as well.
So you mentioned that you were having a wonderful kickoff with lots of new faces and returning participants on campus. Did you have the kickoff? How many are new and how many are returning thereabouts?
Yeah, great question. So we were so happy. We had our whole summer to do a lot of community engagement and some more upfront promotion, just the way our timeline worked last year. It was more hit the ground running kind of scenario. So we're happy to see lots of our returning participants, but also lots of folks that are new. So I'm going to say we'll probably have about 25% new faces on campus, maybe 75% returning, but we're pretty early into the season. We just kicked off on September 16th. And I think you had asked, how did we kick off? And it was with the Dementia Live experience. So we'd partnered with a few different folks, Educate, they're called, and then the Center of Excellence in Healthy Aging at Cape Breton University to offer this experience. And really what it is an opportunity for people to understand the brain changes that are happening for folks with dementia. So it was a simulated experience, sensory experience. Everyone went through it and then came out and were able to unpack the experience with their group. So we saw, I think, close to 50 people on campus that day for that one offering.
So yeah, I assume, you know, when you're dealing with issues like dementia, it's pretty important issue for you guys to address.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with something like dementia, we're noticing now that it's so widespread. Everybody has a story of either a family member or neighbor, someone in their community who's impacted by dementia. And I think we all have so much to learn in terms of how to support people, families, caregivers. And the more we know, the better off we all are.
So you mentioned that you connected with returning NSCC faculty who invited CORAH to participate in a movie screening featuring mental health speakers and discussion circles with social services faculty and students. And that took place on September 26th. After watching the movie Inside Out, a guest speaker shared their experience living with schizophrenia, followed by a Q&A and feedback session. How did that event go? And was it well attended? And were people able to participate in the Q&A and discussion?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. So I really have to say I can't take credit for this at all. So this is really one of the things that we're so fortunate about being place-based within NSCC. So our social services faculty and students had organized this day just as you described, and then invited CORAH participants into the fold. So we really get to benefit so tremendously from things like that. But we also had another event happening at the same time. So I was back and forth between both spaces, but we probably had, I think, 75 people on campus that day for the event. They also had a food bank drive for the student pantry. So there was lots of food goods coming in. And I got to participate in the Q&A and the speaker presentations, and they were profoundly impactful. There was a lot of emotion in the room. There was really great questions. And then people had a chance to do these breakout groups, so intergenerational breakout groups talking about mental health, you know, through generations and what's changed, how do people approach it, all sorts of good things. And I heard such great feedback from the day. It was incredible, really and truly. So I have to give a shout out to those NSCC social services faculty and students for inviting us again into the fold and being so open to creating space for people to share their journey with mental health.
So you have a number of events lined up, including cooking classes. And maybe you can tell me a little bit about what that entails.
Sure, happy to. And so our cooking classes we're really doing well with these. As I would say maybe our most popular offering. We have a very beautiful commercial kitchen right on site here, the former culinary program using, and we have a staff member who's just a delight and is able to offer cooking classes that makes it fun for everybody. So even if you've never cooked before, because we have some folks that are maybe they were in a relationship their entire lives. Maybe one partner or was doing the cooking and they never really learned how to do it, and now they're interested in doing that. And we also have people who've been cooking their whole lives. So it's a really nice mix of people that are coming together, learning some new culinary skills, being social, and then getting to share a meal together. And we often make enough so that people have leftovers as well. Recipes are shared, best practices are shared, kitchen techniques and tricks are shared, and it's just such a beautiful atmosphere to be a part of.
Now, another event is named an information session. What does that involve?
So we also tend to host a number of information sessions throughout the year. And actually, just before I'm hopping on the call here, we just wrapped up a wonderful estate planning workshop with Louise Campbell. And so she just provided a wonderful overview of, you know, some pretty complex stuff. Some of us have, myself included, challenging time breaking down all the language. What's a will? Who's power of attorney? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she puts it into some really clear, easy to digest concepts. And so we just had that. I think we had almost 50 people in the room for that today as well. And participants are able to ask their own questions in the audience, and then we all learn from those questions as well. So that was just one, but generally speaking, we host a number of them throughout the year. We have a pain relief workshop happening. Yesterday, we hosted Beth Bennett with the Alzheimer's Society to talk about brain health and preventative measures that we can take to ensure that we, you know, maybe stave off dementia progression and keep our brains healthy. So it's a wide range of topics. And we're also, we're developing our program based on what the interest is of our CORAH participants. Last year, we did a survey at the end of the year, and we were able to generate information to find out, what do you want to learn about? What's of interest? What's top of mind? Who's got these facilitation skill sets in our CORAH community and would be willing to offer presentations. So that's all that helps guide our process.
Also on the horizon is a foot care clinic, and
Yes.
that's self-explanatory, but maybe there might be some detail you can provide, I guess, on it.
Sure. Yeah. So we started that last year as well. And again, I consider CORAH an upstream health intervention. We know that there's so many layers to our health and well-being, social activity, physical activity, and having access to resources and services, which is part of CORAH's umbrella as well. And foot care service in rural areas, there was a bit of a gap. So we've been able to establish a pretty popular foot care clinic within our CORAH program as well. Generally every 6 weeks or so, and we have a list of people that have been returning, and we're slowly adding on new clients as we have the space to accommodate.
Now, something with a less self-explanatory name and curiously named is a what you call a death cafe. Maybe you can get into what that's all about.
Yeah, sure. So this is a new concept, absolutely. It's something that I really wanted to get off the ground for a number of years, and we were so fortunate to find a wonderful facilitator. We have Stephen Anthony and Georgette Burke who are going to be offering this for us. So I say in its simplest form, a death cafe is an opportunity to get together, eat cake, and chat about death. And it's practiced all around the world. And I think there's 75 countries or something that have been registered offering death cafes. And we say that generally speaking, North Americans tend to tiptoe around this topic, and really and truly it's something that happens to all of us, and we need to provide space for people to be able to talk. So our first one is October 31st, and within the first week of registration, I think we had 20 plus people registered. So clearly I think that there is interest in this type of information, or not information, this opportunity to share, this opportunity to be present and hold space for this topic.
And another event you have coming up is what's called a CORAH afternoon. What's that all about?
Okay, so our crafternoons, we're calling them. So they're just going to be kicking off. I think it's next Tuesday we begin, the second week in October. And it's a chance for folks to get together really informally, bring your crafting project, craft with others, be inspired in a creative environment. We'll also have some puzzles, some large puzzles and boards that you can take and, you know, move around. So you don't have to do the 1,000-piece puzzle in one day, for example. Adult coloring books and a few other crafty type ideas on hand for folks that might want to tinker around. But yeah, that'll be a regular feature if it's popular. People have asked for that opportunity in that space, so we're hoping to kick it off next week.
Now, I know these are on the horizon, but How much interest if have you received for these?
So in our surveys last year, there was quite a bit of an expression of interest in additional arts-based programming. And so we've tried to offer some specific workshops. We just hosted a mandala workshop, which was a very intricate design that people create with a compass and protractor. I was going to say projector, and created these really beautiful art pieces. And so we do have these specialized workshops, but I wanted to create a space where people might be able to be a little less formal, coming with whatever project they're working on, maybe learn from others, get a sense of how to do this and that. So I think this one upcoming, maybe 12 people registered for our first one, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that ballpark. But again, new initiatives, they take time to grow. And so we'll see where this takes us.
So do you have any other events, maybe not in the near future, but a little bit further down the road you guys are looking at, or any other plans that you guys are making?
Right. So we're working on our November, December calendar, and we do have a meditation program that's coming up. We start with an introduction to meditation in terms of presentation, more like those information sessions you were asking me about. And we have Monica McCarthy with Monoculi Wellness. And she offered meditation classes for us last year, but we're going to create this opportunity to learn about meditation and then offer a series of meditation classes for folks that were interested in attending following that. And actually on Monday, which would be, the date is escaping me right now, October
16th?
Thanks, Jake. Yeah, October 16th. We are going to be hosting a presentation with Money Path Atlantic. They're a group that creates all sorts of opportunities for folks, financial literacy related topics to learn about frauds and scams prevention. So that's happening on Monday. We have a full house for that. Our CMP will be joining them to provide some information about what they're seeing locally on that topic, and really important to have the chance to learn from one another on that topic as well.
Well, that's great. It sounds like it's a pretty busy time, and that you guys are in the middle of a lot of activities over there. And I appreciate you making time in your busy schedule to answer my questions and speak with our viewers.
Thanks so much, Jake. I really appreciate the platform. And if I could maybe just add quickly that we are new and we are interested in hearing from you. If you have ideas about what you'd like to see offered at CORAH or a skill set that you'd like to share, we're always interested in hearing from you. And perhaps I can share that contact info with you, Jake, or you'll have it on the screen. I'm not sure, but.
Thank you for watching. Please tune in again to find out what we will be talking about on The Record.